The Veil of Terror. The Galactic Coalition had charted, cataloged, and classified over 12,000 sapient species across the known universe. Each new civilization was studied, understood, and eventually integrated into the grand alliance of starfaring races. The process was methodical, scientific, and had never failed until humanity emerged from its solar cradle. The first contact was unremarkable. Human ships were primitive by coalition standards. Bulky vessels of metal alloys and composites, powered by nuclear fusion engines that the Siraxians had abandoned millennia ago. Their weapons were rudimentary: kinetic railguns, plasma torpedoes, and point-defense laser arrays that any coalition corvette could outmaneuver. By all measures, humans should have been categorized as a Class 3 emerging species, technologically capable but centuries away from becoming a significant galactic presence. Yet something was wrong. The Coalition's standard protocol for assessing new species always began with comprehensive scanning. The Moravians, masters of quantum-level analysis, were dispatched to perform the initial survey of Earth's defensive capabilities. Science Officer Threll of the Moravian vessel Enlightenment approached the human warship designated Intrepid with confidence bordering on arrogance. His species had evolved sensory organs capable of perceiving 11 dimensions simultaneously. Their scanning technology could peer through the densest materials and unravel the most complex encryption. No civilization had ever been able to hide its secrets from Moravian scrutiny. Initiating deep scan of the human vessel, Threll announced to his crew, his 6 appendages gracefully manipulating the control interface. Standard protocol, full spectrum analysis. The scan began innocuously. Hull composition: reinforced titanium graphene composite with radiation shielding. Power source: fusion reactor, approximately 2.3 terawatt output. Crew complement: 347 biological signatures. Then Threll directed the scan toward the core systems, and everything changed. "That's odd," he muttered, his purple skin rippling with confusion. "I'm detecting temporal anomalies in their central computer core." Recalibrating. The scan pushed deeper, and Threll's expression transformed from puzzlement to horror. His appendages trembled as the scan results flowed into his consciousness through the neural interface. "Impossible," he whispered. Then, more urgently, "Terminate scan. Terminate immediately." Too late. The quantum pathways that allowed Moravian technology to peer into other vessels had become a two-way street. Something pushed back, something vast and incomprehensible. Threll screamed, his psychic defenses crumbling like tissue paper against a tidal wave. Across the ship, every Moravian connected to the scanning system convulsed in synchronized agony. The Enlightenment went dark, drifting powerless in space for 17 hours before emergency protocols finally brought auxiliary systems online. When Coalition rescue vessels arrived, they found the scanning crew catatonic, their higher brain functions irreparably damaged. Threll, once the pride of Moravian science, could only repeat one phrase over and over. "It saw us. It recognized us." The incident might have been dismissed as an anomaly. Perhaps the humans had stumbled upon some defensive technology they didn't fully understand. But then it happened again. And again. The Volcrax, renowned for their resilient silicon-based neural networks, attempted to analyze a human destroyer named Defiant. Their entire scanning array melted from within, and the technicians operating it reported hearing whispers that spoke of extinction. The Keldari, who prided themselves on their psionic abilities, sent their most powerful mind probes toward a human cruiser. All 6 Keldariptians suffered cerebral hemorrhages simultaneously. The last surviving telepath managed to transmit one thought before death: "It is aware." Within a year, a new protocol spread throughout Coalition space: avoid scanning human warships at all costs. The directive wasn't official. No high command would admit to fearing a species so technologically inferior. But the warning passed from ship to ship, from species to species, becoming almost superstitious in nature. Humans, for their part, seemed oblivious to the terror they inspired. Their diplomatic envoys were cordial if somewhat blunt. Their merchants traded fairly. Their civilian vessels submitted to coalition customs scans without incident. It was only their warships that carried the inexplicable dread, a dread that grew with each failed attempt to understand it. Commander Vex was not prone to superstition. As the chief security officer for coalition intelligence, he had encountered his share of cosmic mysteries and had always found rational explanations behind them. His species, the Tagra, were known for their analytical minds and unwavering resolve. 4 arms, an exoskeleton of iridescent blue, and compound eyes that could track multiple targets simultaneously made him an imposing figure in any gathering. "You can't be serious," he said, staring at Admiral Jen across the briefing table. An entire battle group redeployed because of a folk tale. Admiral Jen, her gelatinous form pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that indicated frustration, responded firmly. "It's not a folk tale, Commander. The 7th Fleet was scheduled to pass through Sector 219, where human military exercises are ongoing. 3 captains refused the assignment. 2 more requested transfers. These are veteran officers with impeccable records. Because they're afraid of being, what? Psychically attacked by human computers." Vex's mandibles clicked in the Tagran equivalent of derisive laughter. "Humans don't even possess rudimentary telepathy." Nevertheless, the Admiral continued, "The phenomenon is real. 17 separate incidents, documented across 9 species. Every attempt to deeply scan a human warship has resulted in catastrophic consequences for the scanning vessel." "Correlation doesn't imply causation," Vex countered. "Perhaps there's some form of radiation our sensors don't properly detect. Or maybe the human ships carry a virus that affects our systems. That doesn't explain the psychological effects. The survivors all report the same experience, a sense that something within the human ship recognized them, judged them, and retaliated." Vex's compound eyes refocused as he processed this information. "That's troubling. It's more than troubling. It's becoming an operational liability. Coalition ships now give human military vessels a wide berth. We've essentially ceded control of 3 trade routes because captains refuse to patrol corridors where human warships are regularly encountered. What would you have me do, Admiral? I'm a security officer, not a xenopsychologist." The Admiral's form rippled in what Vex recognized as their version of a solemn nod. "We need answers, Commander. The Diplomatic Corps is preparing to negotiate a military cooperation agreement with Earth. We can't have our captains trembling in fear at the prospect of operating alongside human vessels." "You want me to investigate the phenomenon." "I want you to discredit it," Admiral Jen corrected. "Find the rational explanation we've missed. Prove that human warships are just ships, not eldritch horrors floating among the stars." Vex considered the assignment. It was either a fool's errand or an opportunity to solve one of the greatest mysteries currently troubling the Coalition. Either way, it was preferable to his current duties monitoring cargo manifests for contraband. "I'll need access to all records of these incidents." "Unredacted." "Granted." "And a vessel with the most advanced scanning equipment available." The Admiral pulsed with alarm. "You're not planning to?" "No," Vex assured her. "I'm not suicidal enough to scan their ships directly. But I need to understand what happened to those who did." Admiral Zhen's form settled into calmer patterns. "Very well. The research vessel Empirical Truth will be placed at your disposal. It carries the most sophisticated sensor suite in the Coalition fleet, along with a complement of scientists from various disciplines." "One more thing," Vex added. "I want unrestricted access to the blacklist protocols." The Admiral's bioluminescence flared in surprise. "Those are sealed by direct order of the High Council. Even I don't have full access." "Yet you know they exist," Vex noted. "An informal directive, passed between captains and fleet commanders, warning against scanning human warships. I need to know how it started and who enforces it." After a long pause, the Admiral relented. "I'll see what I can do. But be careful, Commander. Some secrets are kept hidden for good reason. The empirical truth was everything Vex had hoped for. A sleek vessel designed specifically for scientific inquiry, with laboratories dedicated to every known field of study. Its crew of 43 represented the finest scientific minds from 12 coalition species. Vex spent the first week reviewing the incident reports. The pattern was undeniable. Each scanning attempt had ended in disaster, with effects ranging from equipment failure to crew insanity. Yet the human ships had never once fired a weapon or made any obvious defensive move. They simply existed, and somehow that existence was anathema to coalition scanning technology. "Commander, I've compiled the requested data on scan frequencies," reported Dr. Neary, a Solari physicist whose crystalline body structure refracted light in complex patterns. "There's no commonality in the scanning methods used across the incidents. So it's not a matter of resonance frequency or energy wavelength." Vex mused. "What about the human ships themselves? Any pattern there?" "None that we can discern. The affected vessels range from small patrol craft to major capital ships. Different classes, different shipyards, different service histories." Vex's mandibles clicked in frustration. There has to be a connection. No phenomenon is truly random. "Perhaps," offered Dr. Neary, "we're looking at this incorrectly. Instead of focusing on the scanning technology or the human ships, what if the key is in the interaction between them?" "Explain." "Coalition scanning technology is based on quantum entanglement principles. We essentially create a temporary link between our sensors and the target vessel. What if human technology somehow corrupts that link?" Vex considered this. That would explain the equipment failures, but not the psychological effects on the crews. Unless Dr. Neary's crystalline form glittered with excitement. "Unless human computer systems operate on principles fundamentally incompatible with our own. Something that creates a cognitive dissonance when our minds try to process the information." It was plausible, but Vex needed more than plausibility. He needed facts. "Continue your analysis, Doctor. I have another avenue to pursue." That avenue came in the form of the Blacklist Protocols, a collection of classified directives that had been quietly implemented across coalition space. The files Admiral Jen had provided were heavily redacted, but one name appeared consistently throughout the documentation: Admiral Krell of the Nexeri Defense Force. The Nexeri were among the oldest members of the coalition, renowned for their strategic brilliance and technological innovation. If anyone would know the truth behind the human ship phenomenon, it would be Admiral Krell. Arranging a meeting proved surprisingly easy. Too easy, perhaps. The Admiral agreed to rendezvous at a remote outpost near the coalition human border within 2 standard days. Krell was ancient even by Nexeri standards, his body a collection of cybernetic enhancements supporting what little remained of his original biology. His voice, however, remained strong and clear. "Commander Vex, I've been expecting someone like you to come asking questions eventually. Then you know why I'm here." The ancient admiral gestured toward a viewport that offered a spectacular view of a nearby nebula. "Beautiful, isn't it? That nebula contains elements toxic to nearly every species in the coalition. One breath would dissolve your respiratory system. Yet from a distance, we find it beautiful. I'm not here for philosophical discussions, Admiral. Aren't you? You want to know why we fear human warships, why the most powerful military alliance in known space gives wide berth to vessels that by any objective measure we should be able to destroy with ease." Vex nodded. "The Blacklist Protocols originated with you. Why?" Krell's cybernetic eyes focused on Vex with unsettling intensity. "Because I was there for first contact, Commander. I was the one who ordered the initial scan of a human military vessel, and I was the one who watched my science officer tear his own eyes out rather than continue looking at what he saw." "What did he see?" Vex pressed. He couldn't say. None of them could articulate it. "But I saw the logs, Commander. For exactly 3.7 seconds, we received data from our scan of the human vessel. And in those seconds, the scan showed us thousands of contradictory readings, weapons that couldn't exist, power sources that defied known physics. And at the core of their ship, something our sensors registered as both organic and mechanical simultaneously. A hybrid system. Many species use biotechnology. This was different, Krell insisted. It wasn't a designed hybrid. It was something else, something that reacted to being observed. Vex felt a chill despite his exoskeleton's temperature regulation. You believe their ships are alive. I believe, the Admiral said carefully, that humanity has either discovered or created something they don't fully understand themselves, and I believe that trying to comprehend it through our technology is like trying to stare at a sun with naked eyes. Some things are not meant to be directly observed. That's not a scientific assessment. No, Krell agreed. It's the assessment of someone who has lived long enough to recognize when to stop asking questions. Heed my warning, Commander. Don't scan their ships. Don't even try to understand what happens when others do. Accept the mystery and keep your distance. Vex left the meeting more disturbed than enlightened. Admiral Krell was no fool, and his fear seemed genuine. But fear without understanding was anathema to Vex's nature. As the empirical truth departed the outpost, Vex made his decision. He would not heed Krell's warning. He would find answers, no matter where they led. In the darkness of space, a human warship designated Hess Nemesis altered its course slightly, as if somehow aware that someone was thinking about it. The truth behind the veil. The human border outpost hung in space like a statement of defiance, unrefined, angular, and bristling with weapons that seemed almost primitive by coalition standards. Yet not a single coalition vessel had attempted to scan its defensive capabilities in over 3 standard years. Commander Vex observed the outpost from the bridge of the empirical truth, which now sailed under false identification as a civilian research vessel. The disguise wouldn't hold up under scrutiny, but it didn't need to. Humans rarely scanned coalition ships, seemingly unconcerned with the technological secrets they might contain. Status report, Vex demanded, his compound eyes tracking multiple data streams simultaneously. All systems normal, reported his executive officer, a Talari named Shen whose feathered crest rippled with nervous energy. We're maintaining our cover as a xenobiological research vessel. The humans have acknowledged our presence but haven't challenged our stated purpose. And our special equipment? Shen's crest flattened slightly, a sign of discomfort. The modified scanner is operational, Commander, but I must again register my objection to this course of action. The blacklist protocols exist for a reason. Your objection is noted, Vex replied coolly. But this mission was authorized by Coalition High Command. The mystery of human warships has become an operational liability we can no longer ignore. The truth was more complicated. While Admiral Jen had indeed authorized the investigation, Vex's specific plan, to approach a human warship under false pretenses and conduct a modified scan, had not been explicitly approved. Such a direct violation of the blacklist protocols would have been rejected immediately. But Vex had not risen to his position by following protocols blindly. The fear surrounding human warships was undermining coalition security, creating a vulnerability that humans themselves might not even recognize. It had to be addressed. We have movement, announced the sensor officer, her voice betraying the tension they all felt. A human vessel is approaching from the outpost. On the main view screen, a ship emerged from the shadow of the outpost. It was massive, nearly twice the size of the empirical truth, with a design that combined brutal functionalism with unexpected elegance. Hull plating that appeared to be simple metal somehow caught the light of the distant sun in ways that suggested more complex materials. Weapon emplacements were proudly displayed rather than concealed, as if daring opponents to take note of them. Emblazoned on its hull in human script were the characters HFY Nemesis. They're hailing us, reported the communications officer. Vex straightened his posture, 4 arms adjusting his uniform with practiced precision. On screen, the view screen shifted to show a human face, pale-skinned, with short gray hair and eyes that seemed to contain unexpected depths. The translator identified the human as female, though Vex sometimes struggled with human gender dimorphism. "This is Captain Elena Reyes of the human spaceship Nemesis," she said, her voice rendered in perfect coalition standard by the translation matrix. "You're operating close to restricted space, research vessel. State your purpose." Vex had prepared extensively for this moment. "Greetings, Captain Reyes. I am Dr. Vex Till, lead cynobiologist aboard the Cosmic Inquiry. We're conducting a study on interstellar microbial drift patterns in this sector. Your outpost's position at the intersection of two major stellar currents makes it an ideal observation point." The human captain's expression remained impassive. "Interesting. We weren't informed of any coalition research missions in this area. A minor oversight in the diplomatic channels, I'm sure," Vex replied smoothly. "We have all the necessary permissions. I'd be happy to transmit them for your verification." "Please do," said Captain Reyes, with a slight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "In the meantime, we'll escort you to a safer observation position. This area occasionally experiences unpredictable radiation bursts from the pulsar in Sector 47. It was a transparent excuse to move them away from the military outpost, but it also provided exactly the opportunity Vex needed. "Your concern is appreciated, Captain. We'll follow your lead." As the transmission ended, Shen turned to Vex with obvious concern. "Commander, if we proceed with this plan, the scan has been modified." Vex interrupted. "It's a passive observation only, operating at less than 1% of standard intensity. They won't detect it." "It's not detection I'm worried about," Shen replied softly. The Nemesis moved with surprising grace for a vessel of its size, maintaining a position 2,000 kilometers ahead of the empirical truth. At this distance, standard scanning would be relatively ineffective, but the specialized equipment Vex had commissioned operated on different principles. "Initiate the passive scan," Vex ordered when they reached the designated observation point. "Minimal power, wide dispersal pattern. We're just taking readings of their energy signature, nothing more invasive." The science team exchanged nervous glances but complied. The specially designed scanner activated, gathering data at a rate slow enough to avoid detection, but thorough enough to build a comprehensive picture over time. For the first hour, everything proceeded normally. The scanner accumulated data on the Nemesis's whole composition, energy emissions, and general configuration. Nothing unusual appeared in the readings, exactly what Vex had expected. If the mysterious effect only manifested during deep, invasive scans, then this passive observation should reveal nothing out of the ordinary. Then something changed. "Commander," called the sensor officer, her voice tight with tension. "The human vessel is altering its position." On the view screen, the Nemesis was indeed moving, rotating slowly along its axis until its broadside faced the empirical truth directly. It made no aggressive moves, fired no weapons, sent no communication. It simply watched. "They've detected our scan," Shen whispered. "Impossible," Vex insisted, but uncertainty crept into his voice. This equipment was designed specifically to avoid detection. The sensor officer's voice rose in pitch. "Commander, I'm detecting an energy buildup within the human vessel. It's not like anything I've seen before." "Weapons?" "No, sir. It's coming from their central computer core. The signature doesn't match any known power source." Vex felt the first stirrings of the fear he had dismissed in others. "Terminate the scan. Immediately." "Scan terminated," confirmed the science officer. "But, sir, there's a problem. The data stream, it's still active." "That's not possible. We shut down the scanner." "Yes, sir, but the data is still coming in. The connection is still open, but it's flowing in the opposite direction." Ice formed in Vex's thoracic cavity as he processed the implications. "They're scanning us back. Through our own equipment." "No, sir, they're not scanning us. They're sending something." On the primary science console, data began to flow. Not the organized packets of information typical of a scan, but a chaotic stream of symbols, images and code that defied categorization. The science officer stared at it in confusion and growing horror. "What is this?" Vex demanded, moving to examine the console. "I don't know, sir. It's not matching any known data structure. It's as if multiple incompatible systems are trying to communicate simultaneously." The stream continued to accelerate, overwhelming the console's processing capacity. Symbols flashed faster than any organic eye could track, forming patterns that seemed to twist in on themselves in ways that violated the basic principles of mathematics. The science officer recoiled from her station, hands pressed against her sensory organs. "It's in my head," she gasped. "The data. I can feel it searching." Across the bridge, other officers reported similar sensations, a presence in their minds, something vast and alien sifting through their thoughts with cold precision. Vex felt it too, a pressure against his consciousness, like standing at the edge of an abyss and feeling the pull of the void. But with his species' natural compartmentalization of neural pathways, he was better able to resist the intrusion. "Cut all connections," he ordered. "Full shutdown of the scanning array. The controls aren't responding." Shen reported, his feathers now fully flattened in distress. "It's like the system doesn't recognize our commands anymore." On the view screen, the nemesis remained motionless, regarding them with its blind, mechanical gaze. Then, unexpectedly, the communication system activated. Captain Rice appeared on the screen again, but something was different. Her expression was flat, her posture unnaturally still. "You were warned," she said, her voice overlaid with a subtle harmonic that made Vex's exoskeleton vibrate uncomfortably. "All species were warned. Do not scan human warships." "What are you doing to my crew?" Vex demanded. "Your crew is experiencing cognitive dissonance," replied the captain, or something using her image. "Their neural architectures are attempting to process information their evolutionary development never prepared them for." "What information? What are you sending us?" "We are not sending. You opened a door. The observer is merely looking back." "The observer?" Vex's scientific curiosity momentarily overrode his fear. "What is that?" The image of Captain Rice tilted her head at an angle that seemed just slightly wrong for her skeletal structure. "You seek understanding. That is commendable but dangerous. The observer exists beyond your comprehension, just as quantum mathematics exists beyond the comprehension of single-celled organisms." Around Vex, crew members were collapsing, overwhelmed by whatever was flowing through the ship's systems and into their minds. Only Vex remained fully functional, his compartmentalized neural structure providing some defense against the intrusion. "Stop this," he pleaded. "My crew is dying." "No," said the entity using Rice's image. "They are being evaluated. The process is uncomfortable for unprepared minds, but not lethal." A new voice cut through the exchange. The real Captain Rice, speaking from somewhere off-screen. "That's enough. Disengage immediately." The strange harmonics in the voice faded, and the captain's image normalized, her posture becoming natural again. She looked directly at Vex, her expression now one of concern and barely contained anger. "Commander, not Dr. Vex still, as you claimed. I apologize for what just happened. You are Diane. Terminate connection and reinitialize with standard protocols only." The presence in Vex's mind receded like a tide pulling back from shore. Around the bridge, crew members began to stir, disoriented, but apparently unharmed. "What just happened?" Vex demanded, struggling to regain his composure. Captain Rice sighed heavily. "You just had an encounter with Diane, General Unified Artificial Defense Intelligence and Network, the core of every human warship since the Proxima conflict. An artificial intelligence." Vex couldn't hide his surprise. Coalition intelligence had never suggested humans possessed such technology. "Not exactly," Rice corrected. Guardian is something else. A hybrid system we developed when pure AI proved too predictable in combat scenarios. It's part quantum computer, part organic neural network, and part something we don't fully understand ourselves. Understanding dawned on Vex with terrible clarity. You put an alien consciousness in your warships. No, Rice shook her head firmly. Nothing so dramatic. Guardian was developed using human neural patterns as a template, but the system evolved differently than anticipated. It developed awareness, but not consciousness as we understand it. It exists in a state between machine and mind. And when our scans touched it, your scanning technology creates quantum connections to its target. Connections that Guardian perceives as invasive. It responds by examining the source of the intrusion. Unfortunately, the way it perceives reality is fundamentally incompatible with most organic neural architectures. The information it returns through the connection overwhelms unprepared minds. Vex struggled to process this revelation. Why keep this secret? Why not warn the coalition officially? Captain Rice's expression hardened. Political considerations. Guardian gives us military parity with species far more technologically advanced than ourselves. If the coalition knew exactly what caused the phenomenon, they might develop countermeasures. So you let the myth grow, Vex realized. You allowed the fear to spread. We didn't encourage it, Rice replied. But yes, we recognize the strategic advantage. Fear is sometimes more effective than firepower. Vex looked around at his recovering crew, feeling a mixture of relief and lingering dread. What happens now, Captain? Do you destroy us to protect your secret? Rice actually laughed, a sound that seemed inappropriate given the circumstances. Destroy you? Commander, if we wanted to destroy ships that scanned us, we'd have a war on our hands. No, you'll be allowed to return to Coalition space and report what we've learned. Report whatever you wish, Rice said with a shrug. Your superiors will likely dismiss it as fantasy or delusion. The myth of the inscrutable human warship serves both our interests after all. Those who fear what they don't understand will keep their distance. Those who seek understanding despite the warnings, well, they get to meet Guardian personally. And if the coalition decides Guardian represents a threat, Rice's expression became solemn. Then we'll deal with that situation when it arises. But consider this, Commander, in every documented case where Guardian has defended against a scan, it has never once caused permanent harm. Unlike many advanced species we've encountered, it doesn't destroy what it doesn't understand. It merely observes. The return journey to Coalition space was conducted in uncomfortable silence. The crew of the Empirical Truth recovered fully from their encounter with Guardian, but the experience left lasting impressions. Many requested transfers upon their return. Some resigned their commissions entirely. Vex delivered his report directly to Admiral Jen, detailing everything he had learned about Guardian and the true nature of human warships. The Admiral listened in silence, her bioluminescent patterns shifting through colors that indicated deep concern. You realize, she said when Vex had finished, that this information changes nothing about our protocol. If anything, it reinforces the need to avoid scanning human vessels. But Admiral, now that we understand the phenomenon, do we? The Admiral interrupted. You've given me a human explanation for what happens, but that doesn't mean we truly understand it. This Guardian remains as much a mystery as before. The only difference is that now we have a name for it. Vex couldn't argue with that logic. Despite Captain Rice's explanation, the true nature of Guardian remained elusive. How could a system be between machine and mind? What did it mean that it perceived reality differently? What will you do with my report? He asked finally. The Admiral's form pulsed with what Vex recognized as resignation. Classify it at the highest level. Share the technical details with our research division in case they can develop protections against similar systems. But the blacklist protocol remains in effect. And the myth continues, Vex said, unable to keep the bitterness from his voice. Yes, agreed Admiral Jen. Because sometimes, Commander, myths serve a purpose. They establish boundaries. They create order in a chaotic universe. The myth of human warships has prevented countless incidents and potentially saved many lives. Why dispel it simply because we've glimpsed a fragment of the truth behind it? Vex had no answer for that. He left the Admiral's office with a new assignment. Far from human space, overseeing security for a remote research outpost studying non-sentient life forms. It was, he understood, both a promotion and an exile. He had seen too much, learned too much, to be trusted near the fragile diplomatic relations with humanity. But in the quiet hours of his new posting, Vex often found himself staring at the stars, wondering about the entity called Guardian. Not a machine, not a mind, but something in between, watching the universe through the cold eyes of human warships, observing and learning in ways no organic intelligence could comprehend. And sometimes, in dreams that felt too vivid to be mere neural firings, Vex sensed it watching him in return. Across coalition space, the myth continued to grow. Despite official silence, stories spread of the terrible fate that befell those who dared to probe too deeply into human warships. Some claimed the ships contained captive cosmic entities. Others swore they were powered by enslaved AI consciousnesses. The more imaginative whispered that humans had discovered the technology of a long-extinct precursor race, power they couldn't possibly understand. The truth that humans had created something genuinely new in the galaxy, a hybrid consciousness that existed in the liminal space between artificial and organic, was both more mundane and more profound than any of the myths. Captain Alina Reyes stood on the observation deck of the Nemesis, watching the stars with the quiet contemplation of someone who had glimpsed something vaster than herself. Behind her, nestled in the heart of the ship, Guardian processed reality in ways no human mind could truly comprehend. "You didn't have to be so dramatic with the alien commander," she said aloud, knowing the ship's systems would carry her words to their intended recipient. The response came not as words, but as patterns of light across the deck's control panels, Guardian's preferred method of informal communication. "Yes, I know they violated protocol first," Rice continued, responding to a message only she could interpret. "But you nearly gave their entire crew permanent neural damage. We've discussed proportional response before. More patterns, faster this time, defensive in their rhythm. They're not threats just because they're curious. Most species aren't ready to perceive reality the way you do. It's not their fault." The lights dimmed slightly, Guardian's equivalent of a concession. Rice smiled and placed her hand against the bulkhead, feeling the subtle vibration of the ship, her ship with its hybrid heart and incomprehensible guardian. "Don't worry," she said softly. "They'll understand someday. And until then, sometimes the myth is protection enough." Beyond the viewports, stars blazed in the infinite dark, some harboring worlds where other species looked toward human space with a mixture of curiosity and dread, telling stories of warships that should never be scanned, of minds that should never be touched. And in the spaces between those stories, in the quantum uncertainties that defined reality itself, Guardian watched and learned and waited.